Thank you, Stephen. Recording in progress. I am the chair of the Child Care Task Force, and I serve on the Workforce Solutions Board of Directors. We have with us Rebecca Cunha, who serves on the Workforce Board, Dr. Stephanie Knight from SMU, Rebecca is from Frito-Lay, PepsiCo, and Alan Cohen from CPAL, and Ken Malcolmson from the North Dallas Chamber. And I think that is all of our task force board members that are here today. Did I miss anybody?
I think you got everybody.
Yay. Okay. Staff members here with us today are Connie Rash, Richard Perez, Demetria Robinson, Stephen Bridges, and I think I've got all of you.
Ashley's
there. Ashley Berner is there, our CFO, which is a really important job. So thank you for joining us today, Ashley. And then I know we have representatives from around the community. So thank you for joining us today. We've got Marjorie Morat from Dallas After School, Tori Manis from Child Care Group, Catherine McCartney from Head Start of Greater Dallas, Jessica Galashaw from the City of Dallas, Elena Hill from Dallas ISD, Rhonda Rako from Child Care Group, Jeff Sullivan from CPAL, Chelsea Jeffrey from Commit Early Matters Dallas, Melanie Rubin, advocate extraordinaire representing the children and families of the world. And I think that's it. So thank you all. And I do know all of you, so I feel really good about that. I am going to go ahead and get started just because I want to be very respectful of your time. So I'll start by just thanking all of you as advocates for joining us today and giving you a little bit of history of the Child Care Task Force. We launched I've got a text right here from Lori saying, please proceed. So you guys don't tell her that I was already doing that, okay? Anyway, we launched this task force back in May 2019, which seems like forever ago. And a lot of things have changed then. And the board established the task force under the leadership at that time of Ellen Torbert, who was the chair of the board. There were to be quarterly meetings. And the main focus, well, I'll tell you the purpose is that we support employers by connecting workers who qualify for child care subsidies with child care resources, to support low-income working and job-seeking parents, removing child care access as much as possible as a barrier to getting and keeping and maintaining employment, and to support the development of our future workforce, providing young children with high quality early care and learning, which we know is so important to their future success in school and life. So those are really, if I would say, our core values or our primary purpose. The task force goals are to ensure that the board has necessary information about the current child care assistance program, state requirements, and any local flexibility. To research child care practices in other areas around the state and really around the country and increasingly internationally as well. To conduct analysis looking at the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of our child care assistance program, and to recommend short and long-term goals and proposed strategies for the child care assistance program. As we all know, and again, those were established back in 2019, the world changed, not even 10 months after that. And so that also brought significant changes to the child care assistance program, as well as to the rest of the world, obviously. So many of the things that changes, and I'm going to ask Demetria to talk a little bit about current landscape in just a second, but many of those changes that you all know about brought an incredible influx of resources. Hi, Heather. To our community and to childcare subsidies. It also, so that's something that the budget of the childcare assistance or the childcare assistance dollars are larger than I would have ever anticipated in my entire life. So that's one thing. It is by far the largest part of our workforce budget. It is all by far the largest amount of money we've ever had for childcare subsidies. It is also, we are challenged with times when, as you know, the Great Resignation, people deciding whether to go to work or to decide not to go to work. And so it has kind of churned the world of childcare upside down while not negating the need for childcare. And we know that we have a long waiting list of folks who need care. So as we look at this huge influx of resources, the challenges that were brought, or perhaps really more like light shown on by the pandemic, it is a time for us, I believe, to stop and think about what ought we to be measuring, who else should be around the table broadly, because while childcare assistance and workforce solutions as a key part in the early childhood arena, it is a key part, and all of you have also other parts of the pie. And so the childcare assistance dollars do not drive everything that has to do with early childhood, which I'm sure you know that. But how might we, and the part of the purpose for this meeting and bringing you all around the table, is to think about how might we work together to look at our community very broadly in terms of the resources that we are providing for children and families, and understanding where childcare assistance and workforce solutions plays a part, and also where we do not. So that's the primary purpose of today's meeting. As I said, we'll pitch it to Demetria in just a moment to give us kind of a current oversight of the landscape, a little bit of level set. And we're not going to go a huge deep dive in there, Demetria. So, 5 to 10 minutes and then a little bit of time for questions. Then I would like to spend some time talking about our current childcare dashboard, if you will, what we report to our board and what we're responsible to reporting to the state, and what things we might add to it that are important to measure our work and to keep ourselves accountable and to inform the work across the community. So what might we add in terms of dashboard items that we are not currently measuring, what data points? And then at the end, I'd like to spend and have discussion around that. And then at the end, really talk about, is there an appetite or an interest in what I started talking about, a greater landscape, dashboard, overall organizational, looking at early childhood, in which, of course, workforce solutions and childcare assistance is a part, but not all. And each of you around the table represent incredibly important pieces of that puzzle. So anybody have, I think I need to stop here and make sure we do not have, or ask if we have any public comment. Do not feel compelled to make public comment unless you want to. You will be allowed to talk other times. So this is not your only chance to get to say anything. But if anybody had anything, hearing no public comment, then I will move on to Demetria, who can talk to us about our landscape and overview of the current state of childcare assistance.
Well, good morning again to all, and thank you for joining us this morning. It's good to have everybody at the table. It's a lot of us. It's different. It's a much bigger table than what we normally have. And with so much going on in the childcare world and the continuous changes that are coming at us, we're excited to share information with you and learn more about your organization and what you have going on as well. In our world of childcare and subsidy and scholarships is all the words they want to use these days to change how we look at the outcomes of serving children with parents going to work and or school through our system. We have Child Care Group that manages the operation of the subsidy program, those that are receiving assistance, the parents of children. In our system, we have about over 14,000 children currently in care right now that Child Care Group is operating. We have about 600 plus providers that are in our system that we're utilizing to assist us with serving the children in early childhood programs. We are currently working with multiple providers with quality to move our providers in a quality system. As you may know, some rules have changed and some House bills have been implemented, where we are moving to a mandatory Texas Rising Star program in the state of Texas. So there's more information coming out on that. The Child Care Services rules from TWC is being updated. They will be presented to the Texas Workforce Commissioners on September 13th with an effective date of October 3rd. So there's many changes coming down from different House bills that have been passed this last legislative session and some Senate bills as well. And I think on, Stephen, do you have on the PowerPoint that you can put up and I can just show the landscape that we wanted to share with everyone? Thank you. This helps. This kind of gives you a picture of where our money and funding comes from. We get funding from the Health and Human Services Department of Children and Families that is funneled down to Texas Workforce Commission, and it comes to the Workforce Board. We, as I mentioned earlier, we are contracting with Child Care Group to operate these services. Right now, they get approximately, October 1, they'll get approximately $6 million to operate the program. 95 million will be contributed to direct care services, and that's attributed to the 14,000 plus children that are in care. We just completed a procurement for quality activities, and the quality activities is a separate pot of funding that we receive, which is 2% of our regular allocation for childcare services. We just completed the procurement for quality initiatives and have multiple vendors that we will begin negotiating with, and that's listed under quality initiatives. In addition, we have external monitors that oversee some of the accounting and programmatic concerns that we may be challenged with. They are Juanita Forbes that does programmatic monitoring and Christine Wynn that does financial monitoring. And we'll break it out where you'll see how many providers we're operating with in this system. It's about 671 providers. I said it was a little bit over 600 providers that we're utilizing. Of that, we have about 166 that are Texas Rising Star currently. And we have a big task ahead of us with increasing TRS providers to help service the children that are in care. Under Child Care Group, they have 9 mentors currently that is assisting with Texas Rising Star process with us moving providers to that system. We have 9 assessors that are contracted through the Workforce Board that we share across 2 other workforce boards, North Central and Tarrant County. And then we have local match partners that we try to secure every year. Currently, we have Dallas ISD, City of Dallas, Dallas College, City of Mesquite, Irvin ISD, and Richardson ISD. And those partnerships helps us secure additional direct care dollars. Right now, it's approximately $9 million that comes in with just matching funds with those entities. And that's the big landscape. I know I said a lot, and I can open it up for questions, Susan, if you like.
Yeah, let's stop here, and thank you, Demetria. Are there any questions, additional information that anyone's interested in before we start talking about next steps and dashboards and metrics? Alan, it looks like, do you have a question? You've got your mic off.
Yeah, quick. So thanks, Demetria. Really appreciate it. I'm looking at the 3 boxes on the bottom right. So the management operations, and it says mentors, and then assessors. I guess, sorry, the two of those boxes. So that seems to be the only place where we're speaking about sort of the frontline staff, is that staffing, is that correct?
Well, the mentors is frontline staff, part of the ops that child care group receives.
Right.
They are part of the child care group staffing. The
So I guess
assessors are not.
6 million, the 6 million covers the mentors, but it does not cover the assessors.
Right. It does not cover the assessors. The assessors are contracted through the
Okay.
workforce board.
Got it.
Okay. And then management and operations, how is that referring to staffing?
That is, but it is also in reference to the quality activities on that particular box there. That is in reference to the quality activities specifically. So that'll be additional. They just applied for those dollars within the quality initiative RFP.
And I think that's what I'd really love at some point to be able to see, or that would help me demystify some of this, which is specifically what are the staff that fall under management and operations, and what is the function, or concretely, what are they tasked with doing? And then mentors, concretely, what does a mentor do? Are there any specific deliverables? Are there any reports that staff or that mentors create? Like what is it that what is their job description, and then the same thing with the assessors, so that we understand what reports are being created, what their role is in the system, and if you were to sort of say, is a mentor doing their job or not, how would we know that? And then same thing on the management and operations side. I'll just say, you know, I clearly, I want to just understand what sort of, I guess, backbone support or operation overhead type support do you feel like you need to be able to run really efficient operations? And are those positions filled, or do they remain unfilled? And you know, is it at a sufficient level so that we're a well-oiled machine?
We can definitely get that information. It's a lot of information to outline at the moment, but we can definitely work on that. We do have, it is very specific with the mentors. As you know, that is a function that is statewide, and the mentors are utilized to assist providers with moving to TRS. So that is a function that we know clearly, as well as the assessors. TWC has implemented certification processes for those roles, specifically for the mentors and assessors. There is a certification process that has been implemented statewide that each of them must complete.
Yeah, and thanks, Dimitri. And look, there's a lot of moving parts. So just having a good diagnosis, so that we've got something, so that we could have conversations about whether or not we should try to increase staffing levels, decrease staffing levels. There's other functions that are missing, not missing. It's just good to have the complete fact base broken out that way.
Yeah, and Alan's, we had a good question here from Chelsea, which I think dovetails into what Alan's asking about. Is there a plan and or resources to staff up mentors, given the mandatory TRS requirements that are going to begin in October?
Yes, and TWC has issued a discussion paper in reference to that, with trying to determine what funds will be allocated for that particular role and that purpose of us having to scale up to assist with the mandatory TRS implementation.
Right. Yeah. So that's a, let me see. Expansion of the minimum quality, and will that come with an expansion of the minimum quality allocation? Jeff is asking. So will that come with it? I think what he means is will there be increased dollars and increased quality dollars? Jeff, tell me if I'm not interpreting that correctly.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's my understanding, tell me if I'm wrong, that the mentors are paid for out of the 2% quality allocation or quality activities piece. And are they not?
There is a separate allocation for the mentors and assessor.
Okay.
And then it is a 2%. So it is a separate allocation that TWC provides it to us separately.
Yeah. So it doesn't come out of the 6 million ops, which is oversight really of the child care subsidy, correct? The $6
That
million.
is correct. The 6 million ops is just for the direct care subsidy. The management and operation of quality improvement and mentors come out of our quality dollars.
Okay. Yeah. So at some point too, it would be helpful to know what I know what the total quality dollars is, but how much of that is allocated to mentors as opposed to quality activities like training.
Absolutely. And I think there's in the discussion paper, it has been submitted through TWC, but we have not officially got those numbers.
Okay. All right. Let me see if I've got any other questions there. No, I think, does anyone else have other questions there about this kind of just overview?
Susan, this is Ken. Just, I wanted to compliment Demetria. I've never seen it portrayed this way, and this makes it a lot easier for the more naive board members to grasp what we're talking about here. So thank you for portraying it that way. And then I also wanted to just observe that I'm very impressed with myself, because I was going to ask the exact same question that Alan Cohen did, but unfortunately I wouldn't have articulated it as well as he did. So thank you, Alan, for asking the questions about mentors and assessors, terms that I'm really not that familiar with, and I would really like to know more about that. Last comment, Susan, and that is, can someone give me a little bit of a flavor? I know these are very naive questions, but a little bit of a flavor about how the local match partnerships work.
Thank you for asking that, Ken, because that is like the mystery of the century. So Demetria, you want to give us a high level how and what is local match? Thank you, Ken.
Each year, Texas Workforce Commission challenges each board area to go and secure local match partners. And it's a portion of our direct care dollars that we must secure match dollars for that to draw down 2 to 1 from the feds. So public entities are usually the best way to go about doing it with partnerships, because it doesn't require an actual exchange of dollars. It is match dollars per se, that they are matching their expenditures that are non-federal dollars from public entities. We can get private donations. It would require us to have a check from that entity and sent to TWC, and then the money is matched and given back to us, but you cannot utilize the dollars specifically from what the donor may want you to use them for. So it is a little bit more challenging when it's private dollars versus public dollars.
So can you just give one example of a recent transaction that we've had? I know we've approved several of these during recent board meetings. So use Dallas College, for example. What's the example of how that partnership works?
So Dallas College will match dollars from, their expenditures on programs that are non-federal. One set is they do it from their foundation, and usually it is funding that they have received that is philanthropic maybe. And so they use the expenditures by reporting them to us quarterly that we send into Texas Workforce Commission. So example, if they utilize $500,000 in one quarter, they'll send us a report of that activity. We're reporting it to the state, and then the state will use it and match it. So we'll get $1 million back for direct care.
But for the public entities, they don't give us any money. They just
Yeah.
certify they spent money that are non-federal dollars spent on qualified childcare activities or qualified activities, and then that draws down a match. If it's so that's and this is one of those things, it took me, Ken, let me just say, an awful lot of years to wrap my head around this when I was doing it. For private dollars, if let's just say Ken Malcolmson said, well, I'm going to give a $2 million donation to Workforce Solutions for local match, then the Ken Malcolmson Foundation would send a check to TWC, but the money would have to come, it could not be donor directed. So it would have to come back and it would be used within the realm of quality, but you couldn't say, well, I want that money to come back and I want it all to go to Miss Mary's Child Care Center. It had to come back just as a pot. And so private contributions are complicated. And generally, most philanthropists are reluctant to write a check to the Texas Workforce Commission, because I'm not even sure that is tax deductible. I assume it is, but I'm not certain about that even. So primarily local match dollars are done in this way from public entities. They tell Workforce Solutions what money they've spent in qualified activities. They cannot be federal dollars that they've spent, because you can't match federal with federal. And then they fill out a whole lot of forms. I can tell you that because I used to fill them out. And then that goes to the state, and then the state looks at them, and then they send the matching dollars back to Workforce Solutions to add to the quality work. Is that right, Demetria? Does that make
That
sense?
is correct. And one thing I will add, it's not additional dollars, right?
Really not additional dollars, yeah.
Right. And it's part of our allocation already. So when we get the 95 million for direct care, that match is already included in there. So we just have to make it happen in order to receive that.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. Yeah, you don't get any additional. You have to basically earn some of that 95 million locally by showing that the local community is investing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So then is the solid line, is that really coming from Workforce Solutions, or is it really coming as part of the allocation to Child Care Group with the 95 million?
It's coming to Workforce Solutions Greater Dallas from Texas Workforce Commission, and then we're contracting it out to Child Care Group.
Okay.
Is that the question you were asking, Ken?
Yeah, I was just wondering about just the portrayal of it here, because if it's incorporated in the $95 million, wouldn't it be then in one of the yellow lines?
We have to secure it first.
Okay. Okay. And then I have one more question, Susan, and I'm sorry to keep going here, but
Please.
this might be more appropriate for Tori, but so is the $6 million ops expense, is that contractualized? And that is that a maximum amount, or is it always spent up to the level that's contractualized?
That's how much we are allocated for the personnel that runs the program annually.
Yeah, but is that a maximum amount, or is that, do you always spend that dollar amount, whatever is incorporated in the agreement?
We absolutely spend every penny of that. Sometimes there are contract amendments that you might be referring to. You see in the board packet every now and then, if the state raises the performance target that we have to ask us to serve more children, we need more hands to do that work. So there would be a operations, administrative allocation, so we could hire the personnel to do that work.
So that would just be an amendment. So you start the year with $6 million of operational budget, and then during the year, if you determine that you need more resources, then you would come back to Workforce Solutions and request those, and then that would come in the form of an amendment to the board.
Ken, let me jump in, and hello, everyone. Spectrum finally came through for me. Ken, what happens is the state of Texas is norming everyone's operations and admin annually. The 6 is a very recent figure. I can remember when the ops cost was 4.9, but they keep pulling information needs. They keep asking for more and more volume and recertification of everyone every year. So that figure is very new, the 6 million, that's this year's figure, but there will be a ceiling at some point because they have normed, and we are economy of scale, much like Houston. Houston and Dallas are very inexpensive per head, if you know what I mean. They get it down to that level. So there is a maximum that Tori could ask for, but reasonably 6 fits this year's workload. We think, we hope, but it's not an infinite sum. We can't just keep pulling money from, because it comes out of service to children. That it is all one sum of money. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Morning, Lori. Any other questions around that? I'm going to ask a question. Tori, and I get it, that and Lori, if we increase the operating costs, that would come out of covering kids in care. Is $6 million enough to meet the demands of this contract?
We hope so. That's what we're aiming for, and that's how much we've been allocated. So we'll manage within that, but we anticipate using every dollar. So, I mean, it's lean. So.
I think Alan has a question.
Well, I just want to follow because I think, Susan, I think that's the right question to ask. And I'm going to pull back to say, again, really want to make sure that we have a really strong staffing plan, really strong descriptions of what every member of the staffing plan is responsible for. Because I think if we lay that out, we're going to see whether or not just the numbers work, and can this be managed with the amount of dollars and staff that we're allocating to CCG, or do we need to increase the amount of staffing and increase dollars? But right now we're just dealing with sort of the labels of this stuff without seeing the specifics. So, the sooner that could be something that we could see for discussion, I'd love that to be more of a discussion based off of concrete facts rather. And Tori, thank you, by the way, for just the idea of like, you're going to make it work. I get that. I think the question is whether it's optimized.
Thanks, Alan. Any other questions about overview of the landscape or anything else? And I do want to apologize because of course this is the time someone would decide to mow the lawn, but I want to make sure, and particularly because we have Marjorie on the call, that everybody understands that while a lot of times we think about child care subsidies for our very youngest children, they do cover care for children young 0 up through their 12th birthday, right? Or 13th birthday, until they are done being 12. Is that correct? So out of school time, whether that's after school or summer programs, if they are licensed or qualified, child care subsidies can also cover the cost of care for older kids too, for school age kids.
Yes.
Okay. All right. All right. Thank you, Demetria. And I will echo Ken. I love seeing this laid out like this. I think there's infinitely more detail to Alan's point, so we can really understand what the operations are, both on the subsidy side as well as on the quality. But this is a really clean way to look at this. So thank you, because it is pretty convoluted. So I'll ask one more question, and again, I apologize for asking questions that I know the answer to, but that's, from a legal background, I guess is how that works. But talk a little bit, if you would, Demetria and or Lori, about how much local flexibility we have with the funds that we receive from from TWC? Like, so could five, for instance, if I decided I don't want to spend 95 million on direct care, could I just take some of that and move it over here to quality or something else? Or how does that work?
I'll take a stab at what I just asked. I just talked with the childcare staff at TWC last week. I spent a couple of days with them and asked a bunch of these questions. The state has, in this new allocation, decided that 2% for quality is not enough. It was a floor. So we're going to get 4% this year, but they're still going to ratchet up the numbers to be served. So the situation is taking this one pie, cutting it into the wedges. You cannot fail to meet the number served. So that 16,000 is a reality, regardless of, and imagine if more of that turns out to be infant care, it could kill us. So they're planning on a certain mix that they've decided is typical of the Dallas area. I will tell you that we have a problem spending this year because so many people have withdrawn their infants from center care. We don't have a lot of infants coming into center care as we might have had in 2018. So when they look back, it's unfortunate, but the mix, I've warned them since February, our mix is well off. It's a lot of after school kids. It's a lot of older youth, which those are the cheaper youth. So quality is up to 4%. If we want to use more than the 4%, we must ask permission and assure that we will still meet our goal. And that takes going to the commissioners and deciding. But I think at the 4%, they think we are inundated with quality money and we need to find creative ways to spend it. The matching fund, and Dee and I have gone round and round about this, we use that as kind of a backpedal. If we had to serve more kids, if we had to know, they've factored it into our money, but not completely. So the targets don't match that match money as much. They're relying on the CCF fund. So Dee, have we ever clarified if the match money can be spent more on quality? Can that be an argument for increasing quality?
Match funds can be moved to quality if we are meeting the performance target and must go to TWC for approval.
And match funds and quality funds oftentimes do not follow the October 1 to October 31st contract. A lot of times the match funds are going to December sometimes. I know in the past they've gone all the way to February. This year, the quality money, we got an overlay that ends March and then another set of quality funds that don't end until October 31st. It's quite a wheel to follow because of all of the injection of funding that has occurred through this, which is phenomenal. I've never seen this much money being spent. No, Ellen, 4% is not the minimum. 2% is still the minimum in the Texas rule. They're going to go, the commissioners have already voted on 4% because they kind of determined that they were not using their flexibility to its maximum, that it's always been 2 was the floor. So this year we'll be given 4% from the get-go, October 1.
So bottom line, if I can summarize what I think I've heard, and then I'm going to ask Ken to do it for me because he probably would be better at it. But bottom line, we have the metric we have to meet is you have to have 16,000 kids in care. That's, you know, that's if we don't do that, then nothing else is okay.
Correct.
Of those 16,000 kids in care, they can be anywhere from infants up to kids after out of school time, so school age kids. Infants and toddlers cost more. So when there are more infants and toddlers and 3 and 4 year olds, obviously in all day care, then that uses the money faster. Out of school time dollars, those kids, since they're generally only in the program for part-time, particularly when it's not the summer, the dollars stretch further, but you could, so that's just to say that the reimbursement cost is different by age of child. The other thing is that as we, so bottom line, have to have 16,000 kids in care. Doesn't matter what age they are. However, we know if there are more infants and toddlers, it's going to use the money up faster, but that doesn't adjust the 16,000. The other question I have is, as we know that TRS reimbursement rates are higher, is there thinking at the state level that will, as there becomes mandatory TRS engagement for more percenters, are we going to see more money so that we can continue to increase those reimbursement rates for childcare centers now that it's going to be basically a requirement?
Great question, Susan. They have, the state has clarified, and we meet with Adam Leonard frequently. In fact, there was a great meeting where he laid everything out for all boards. He believes that he has provided enough buffer for any scenario, looking at how fast we normally would grow in the quality ranks, looking at the age of children in the past. So they think that the TWC is they believe that the numbers they've assigned to the money will fit these scenarios for 1 year. They have increased several factors. They're also looking at the parent share of cost. They would allow our board to reduce the parent share of cost. That is a conversation. That would spend more money and would free up money for homes and families. Next year, October of 23, we believe there would be a statewide rule to cover parent share of cost. It will be consistent across boards. They're looking at more consistency because the legislature is having trouble understanding this as well. So all of this differentiation, and that does suspend some local control, but I think in the long haul, having the legislature, the policymakers really comprehend how this money flows would help all of us, I think, in innovation. It would leave a lot of this explanation would not be as necessary. I know you've got 2 questions, Chelsea, and Jeff was first, I think, and then Chelsea.
Yeah, for sure. So my question is a silly one to clarify for myself. Let's imagine our allocation is $100, just to simple the math. When we talk about moving the quality allocation to 4%, does that now mean we have $96 for direct care and $4 for quality, or $100 for direct care and another $4 for quality?
No, it comes out of the same bucket, Jeff. So it's 96 and 4. The 96 should cover, though, the quantity of the quantity of target that they've set. And please understand, it turns into, I mean, if it's 16,000 kids, we may serve more than 40,000 to keep that 16,000 at a daily total. So it's
because it's significant churn. So I think Chelsea had a question, and then Rebecca has one in the chat.
That was going to be my clarifying question. Is the 16,000 like kids served per day or kids annually served? And so there's 14,000 currently in care. Is there a wait list right now?
Yes, always, Chelsea, always a wait
Okay.
list. It's been as bad and prior to COVID as 7,000 and 8,000. It's around 4 now, unless Tori and her team want to correct that, 4,200, something like that, Tori, or is it increasing?
No, it's actually shrunk just slightly, but it's about 4,200, I think, right now.
Okay, nailed it.
Yep.
So is the challenge moving families from the wait list to those additional 2,000 spots that are open? Is it just paperwork logistics right now, or what's the challenge moving those families to care?
That is a great question. And I know Susan, Tori, and everybody who's dealt with this can tell you how difficult it is. This is means testing. So families who have signed up have been pre-screened, but not necessarily eligible. We have to work the wait list to capture the Texas priority groups. That would be anyone who's on welfare food stamps comes first, veterans, families, we've got some sibling activity. So you have to screen that list every time you've got openings. As you proceed to the working poor, people who are working, have their job, not looking at training, don't have any special circumstance, they have to come back with documentation. And that is the hard part. And Childcare Group has an amazing system. Everything can be done online. Everything can be done via fax or email, call in. They've got all of those tools, but parents are busy. Parents are working. They're trying to get their documents together. And that's the whole problem, really, is the start and stop of this. Getting people in, calling them in, processing them. They have to pick their childcare center. They have to negotiate that slot, make sure there's something available. I'll leave it at that, but leave it to Tori or one of her staff. Tori, have I left any of the wrinkles out? I know this is a difficult task for your people.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, parents will call in or attest that they meet the criteria. They get on the wait list, and they attest that they qualify for the program. But when we're ready to place them, we will send out packets of information and either don't get a response, they're non-responsive, or they don't meet the qualifications anymore. Maybe they're not working, or they found another solution. Or if they, sometimes people say they're in a priority group, and once we try to request that paperwork, they don't meet those priority criteria. So they have to then go back into the queue. So, there are just a lot of particulars. It's such a highly regulated program with so many different rules for procedure, process, timing, and priority. So it complicates it a little bit.
And I may be jumping ahead on the agenda because Susan, I know you're going to talk about data.
Yeah, so I want to ask your question, but I want to make sure we get to Rebecca's question in the chat too.
Okay, perfect. So do we have data around families who may not be in that first 2,000 on the wait list, but further down the wait list by age, where we can say this provider in this area has an opening for that child if they get their documentation ready to go, and we can get them a seat where they need a seat at that age level tomorrow. Do we have data around that currently?
I would say no, Chelsea. I don't think we are capturing, because of all the priority groups and because nothing is a direct line to service because of the length of the list. That person sadly could have all of this together, but not be at the top of the list this week, not be processed this week. That's a really strong question though. I don't know how many we're missing because of that effort. That's an interesting point.
Yeah, Chelsea, maybe I want to see if I'm interpreting your question right. You're thinking about maybe sort of a matchmaking thing.
Yeah.
Like we've got, yes. So, I know that we have contemplated that, like with contracted slots and things like that are different options that we could use.
Yeah.
The challenge is that if Miss Jones gets up on the wait list today and is ready to enroll her child, it might be that she either wants care near her home or near her work, and there may not always be an opening in the area where she wants care. So that's one of those conundrums that we haven't figured out how to quite solve for yet. So, but I do think it's great to think about how could we match make. Remember, it is a parent choice program, so we can't direct them. We are forbidden from saying, this is a TRS quality center. You need to enroll your child there. The parent gets to make the decision, but we do give all kinds of hints, information, suggestions, that sort of thing. But definitely open to that.
I'm even wondering for parents who are currently on the wait list, like if we can say, I think Elena left the call, but like we're obviously working with Dallas ISD on pre-K enrollment. Can we say, okay, we want to ensure that parents are working, that kids are in a quality care environment. How can we help those families who are on the wait list navigate towards an open seat, whether that is in a quality child care center that is in their zip code, or we know that there are seats open at their local elementary school around the corner. Again, not full day of care, not perfect, or Head Start. Like, how can we ensure that those families who may be sitting on the wait list and don't know their options while they're sitting on the wait list have direct access to a seat tomorrow, so those families can go to work and kids can get in care? And that can be a larger conversation, but I think we know there are seats available and where they are right now.
Yeah, so I think, and that you brought up perfect reason, Chelsea, why I think getting more people around the table to think through that, because if we laid out the whole landscape, you saw this picture here, which is a fantastic overview of the child care subsidy program. If we overlaid, okay, here's public pre-K, and how does that overlay where there are openings in probably families that have 3 and 4-year-olds are qualified for that care. What does the Head Start landscape look like? And then begin to look at this as more holistically instead of separate entities. That's where I think that that's a great aspiration for us to get that way. Because again, it's we know that there are pre-K seats that are going open. I mean, pre-K is not fully subscribed. We know there's a waiting list for people who need childcare. And Jeff asked a good question here is how much more can we collect up front? And I think you mean when parents apply, I'm assuming, is there more information that we could get, around, certainly we know what ages their kids are, but, do you need childcare close to your home, close to your work? Those kind of things. Are there other things that we could ask that could help facilitate? And again, I understand that we don't tell people this is where you take your child, but at least to be able to provide options outside of the childcare subsidy world. Does that make sense?
And there's a limit on anything that we would pull from them because it is at time of registration. So if we
Sure.
pull data on finances, could be irrelevant in a month or 2 weeks even. So it's difficult. Now, age of children, I think we have more of the data, Alan, and I'll get that out to you this week, I promise, on what we have collected in that realm. The state is looking at collecting more. I'm working with them on what are we going to collect, what aren't we going to collect, because I think the wait list may be misleading in either direction. It could be understated, it could be overstated as to who is really eligible and waiting for services.
Right. And let me ask one more question there, and then I promised Rebecca, I'm going to go back to your good question here, is I know you contact families on the waiting list when a place becomes open, or when the slot becomes open, not a specific place. Do they get connected? Do they get any other contact while they're on the waiting list? Like any other information about pre-K or anything else?
I'll leave that to Tori or even Rhonda if she's on the call.
Yeah, let me start, and Rhonda and Sherry can fill in if I missed something. They get a notice of childcare eligibility and that they're on the wait list. We let them know. It has not been the practice of contractors, and we've polled everybody in our region, and they're not, just because of the volume of people and the number of staff that are available to do this work, to really go back and ask these other questions. However, one of the things that we have been trying to do lately is go back through that wait list and try to comb through families that we think might actually meet the Head Start guidelines and drive them towards our area Head Start programs. The conundrum with that is that, and we are mainly looking for families that might meet the job training capability because they're likely to have a lower income. But the challenge is the Head Start eligibility guidelines are about 27.7 for a family of 4. And for the subsidy, they're way up at 72 for a family of 4. So there's a huge gap. And so we found that the families that we are able to refer back into a Head Start program in our community, be it Childcare Group or Head Start of Greater Dallas, is going to be really, really low. So it's hard to find folks that really are fitting that bill. But we've been thinking internally about the idea of using some of our navigators which we already have, but could they play a role in really working through that wait list and going to provide some case management? And we aren't currently funded for that, but we do have experienced navigators on staff that work with another program that concept could be scaled and really give some good outreach to those families on the wait list while they're waiting and look more into their needs.
Yeah.
And Tori, we can work with you to get you literally zip code by zip code for every Dallas County school district where open seats are. At least we have it kind of point in time, but at least as a starting point to be able to work through where open seats are by age.
Really good point. And it might be something that we could talk about. Are there philanthropic dollars that could cover increased support for navigators so that money's not coming out of the current childcare subsidy dollars? So I do want to get back to Rebecca's question, and thank you, Rebecca, for being so patient. So she's asking the chat, they'll increase parent share of cost via regulatory authority, or do they need to pass a law next session?
That's a great question, Rebecca, and it's a super easy answer. The state is actually going to reduce parent share of cost in most cases. That would reduce the Dallas parent share of cost. That's why I mentioned we might reduce it this year, corresponding to what we expect. This is at the level of the commissioners. The commissioners make these determinations. They just need to look at what would be fair. And with all of the money in the childcare system, I think they are looking at giving parents a little bit of a break. So hopefully it'll go that direction. I'll send you more information on it. In fact, we can share with the board members what may come for the September agenda, but I would love to see us look at a slightly reduced. We're not the middle, but we're a little higher than the middle across the state. And that would be something that we could do now to help parents to be able to pay for care. Thanks for
Thank you. And I guess I phrased it wrong. I meant like, is the state going to increase what they pay in order to reduce?
Yes.
And they don't have to pass a law, so we don't have to. Okay.
No fight, hopefully. And then
Yeah.
it's the commissioner question. And this has always been at the state level. And I've talked to other states as well. Some states have waived it and actually factored in state revenue. That's not going to happen in Texas, but we will be able to pay more of the cost, the total cost to the vendor. Now, this is a very important factor for the childcare provider because oftentimes they never collect that parent share of cost. They want to keep the child, they want to keep the family, and they'll forego the parent share of cost if the parent really can't pay it. That's not what is intended. And so I'm hopeful that we will move past that and we'll be able to pick up more of the actual cost for the family.
Good. And then just to tail end on the other super fast, another factor is, because I've asked Tori about this before, about the waitlist situation, is that there are just not enough early childhood education teachers. So that's another factor. They don't have enough people in the centers sometimes because they get paid so little.
Absolutely. And that is a national problem. And there's a lot of research in it, but it's not getting the change. It's very hard to intrude on private business. And I think that's a conversation that's happening throughout the country. How much can the government do to supplant what the private sector should do? Finally, I got a whole group of people who are talking about the issue of the business case for childcare as opposed to cost of quality. It is a business case conversation. People will tell you the margins in this industry are not, nobody would invest in this industry looking at a business plan. So we do need to look at why this industry cannot pay a living wage. And it doesn't stop at childcare. It is the care industry. And we're hearing in Texas from the elder care, adult care for people with disabilities. I'm on 2 committees now about addressing care per se, not just childcare. Childcare is critical and it's massive, but it's across the care spectrum. People do not want to take care jobs. State is looking at possibly some activity in the high school system, going into high schools and finding more and more young adults. I was a candy striper in high school. I was working with elderly and ill, but there has to be a remedy for no one wanting to work in the care industry. Wage is one factor. I think it's the industry is the other factor. And a lot of work needs to be done in this area.
Alan has his hand up.
Yeah, so thanks, and delighted by kind of the tangible nature of the waitlist conversation. So 2 quick things on waitlist. Tori, with regard to the navigators, I'm just pulling up the guidance from TWC's Child Care Services Guide on uses of quality funds, and one of the uses of quality funds that is highlighted as consumer information regarding the selection of quality childcare for parents. Do we have an opinion as to whether navigators would fall under that?
I haven't read that, Alan, so I don't really know. But we would love to provide more deeper services to families. I think that's a high issue. I think we know that there are other programs and represented by some of those on this call that we could be referring into. So that'd be great if we had, if that was the direction we decide to go strategically. Be happy to.
I just think that that's exactly the kind of conversation. Can we direct quality funds to towards a navigator program if we say that everything is ready to go, and we could immediately activate navigation for parents to get them into childcare. So I don't want money to be sort of the issue on whether or not we're getting information to parents. The second thing is I just want to understand the wait list data flow. An Excel workbook was provided based off of a past information request, which I really appreciated, which had a breakdown of number of kids on wait list by age, by zip code. So there's a number of things that we asked for that was provided. Maybe this is a question for Richard, but to replicate that workbook at any point in time, I'm not understanding why it takes so long. Is that something? How long would it take just to sort of get the output of where the wait list is on those dimensions for today?
I don't know if Richard's.
Good morning.
There you
Yeah,
go.
good morning, everyone. This is Richard. And I have a little bit of information on that. We can look at some of the demographics for people who are on the wait list with a little bit of information, but they don't do a full eligibility for the people wanting the childcare. For example, they don't get 100% into the eligibility, where you're currently working, that kind of thing. I think they wait for a slot to open. And this is
Right.
getting a little in the weeds before they open up what's called a program detail for childcare, where all that information is populated. But if, just the information of who and a little bit of characteristics, I think that is available. There's some tables for that.
But Richard, I think what he's asking is for the information that you did gather last time, is that just a simple report? Or I know part of the problem, Alan, is going to be the change is almost irrelevant on a daily. It's going to move, but we don't know how it moves. I showed you it would be, 3,000 a month ago and it's 4,000 now. How many of those are the same as the 3,000? In other words, the ebb and flow is not consistent. If people don't stay, you ask the question, I'm asking the state's going to go with a formidable number of days that people stay on the wait list and a process of checking in and checking out if they don't make it through to services. So many changes coming. Richard, is the report a formed report now that you've done it once and can just be generated on demand?
Not really. It's an ad hoc report if that's what you're asking.
Yes.
Now, and you're absolutely right. It might change a little bit. And I ran some numbers yesterday and put them, I don't know if they're in the next slide or the slide after that, but whoever guessed the wait list, it's 4242. So they were pretty, right on the button. But that'll change a little bit today and maybe tomorrow as well. But yes, it's absolutely an ad hoc report. It's nothing in a canned report that the state has produced.
So I guess what I'm saying is, can we set it up so that it is just a replicable report? And by the way, I want to say, I understand that the interpretation of the report and the context and how you interpret it is important, okay? But I'd still like to be able to, and I think partners would like, that I talk to, would like to be able to just have something like I get for lots of other things across many, many topic areas, which is just in my email. I'd like to see daily, like where the wait list is. And at a minimum, I view that this is an indication of whether the parent is eligible or not. This is a family with kids that is saying that it would be helpful for me to have childcare so that I can go to work. And I think that's good information to see. And then as a point of discussion, it's important to also discuss the context around it. But there should be, I'm struggling to understand why it takes weeks at a time, other than the initial setup. I can understand takes a little bit of time, but can we prioritize an initial setup? And would it be possible for as a board member, or if any partner would like it, to be able to get an auto-generated email with the updated numbers on a daily basis.
We'll get back
That
to you,
sounds
Alan.
perfect.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Lori, and then I want to follow
I
up
was just
there.
going to say, I think this is very much a path between workforce and CPAL that we need to work on. I don't know how many other people initially want that daily email, Alan. So I think if we can come to terms with that, and then the whole point of this meeting was to build an ecosystem that's bigger than us.
And I don't want you to think of me as CPAL because I'm not saying this as a representative of CPAL. I'm just asking this.
You want this as a board member.
Yeah, as a board member, and as just in terms of good reporting, this is something that will help me certainly, and does not, and seems to be information that we should be capturing on a daily basis. So is that something that we could get, and or what would be the barriers to doing that?
And let me look into it. Let me see if there's a
Well,
way.
and I think that's a perfect segue into kind of the last part of the agenda, which really is looking at what, as we create a dashboard, which we have, but what data points are going to be the most important to have on that dashboard, both for us as board members, or we as board members, but also for the community. And so that's where, I know absolutely we have number of kids in care. That's kind of like the bottom line. If you don't have that, then nothing else matters. Sounds like I know that's true in terms of the money. We keep track of number of TRS centers and the change, I think month over month. We keep track, I believe, of number of kids who are in quality programs. So those are kind of the key dashboard items. What I'm interested to know, particularly from committee members, and I'm thinking Alan, but others, what other pieces of data would be most helpful to have? And Alan, thinking around if the wait list, what wait list items would be most important? And then also what community partners, what would help you as well? So Alan, you want to go?
Yeah. Well, so I'll just focus on two things. One is just the wait list, and the information that was provided on the most recent spreadsheet is excellent. If you are capturing zip code of where families are working, that would also be nice, but I don't know if you're capturing that. The second thing is I really do want to start to get clearer reporting than what is lifted up to the state quarterly, and in a more timely way of quality investments in the dollar flows, and specifically which providers are participating in activities where we're spending quality dollars, and or if they are materials or in some cases even incentive payments, which providers are receiving the benefit of those specifically.
Okay. Let's see in the chat here. Marjorie, and this is an age breakdown. I think Marjorie is how many on the wait list are school age kids or kids who need after school care. I mean, and I think just breaking it down by age in general, that to me is where we have potential intersectionality with it, particularly with public pre-K, sometimes with Head Start, but to Tori's point, the Head Start qualifications, income qualifications are much lower than many people who are working, but at least that age gives us some thinking if we knew that on the wait list.
We do have that, Susan and
Yeah.
Marjorie. We can provide that as of our latest report that I'm looking at. We have 1,172 school agers. So
Okay.
on the wait list.
Okay.
I'm asking Stephen to move through the slides here, guys, because we sort of got stuck and didn't progress. There are the dashboards that exist are in here, and I don't know how helpful, but it does give a little bit more information. This is the wait list slide, parent, customer data, demographics. And I think all you're asking, Alan, is to have this report updated daily. And I think that's a little much, but weekly, I'll check into it. I'll see what we can do.
Just the spreadsheet. I don't need the graphic design or
I gotcha.
whatever. Like just the literally the Excel workbook that you sent me.
You got it.
Ellen,
Okay.
and others, does this include, are there other things? Because what I don't see on this is like zip code, either of where the family lives or where they work. Is that something that would be useful to add?
Yeah.
Yes,
Richard, that is on a sheet, right? I mean, available to us. It just didn't make it to the graphic,
Where they live,
not where they
but not where
State
they
doesn't
work.
collect that. But I have asked about it, Alan. That is one of the
It's-
conversations I'm having.
yeah, so literally exactly the workbook that you.
Got it.
And
Next slide, if you would, Stephen, let's just go through. There we go. That was the quality care slide, and numbering care in quality. And for everybody on here, we will download this short deck to the chat.
quick clarification point on the previous slide. I know it has customer breakdown by age. I'm assuming that's the parent caregiver. Can we also get that by the child?
I think it was the wait list. Go back one, Stephen. This is parent customer demographic. Richard, which one is this? Currently served or on the wait list?
It's both. So the graphs are wait list, and the others is just a snapshot of who's currently on care.
So the left
Um,
side of the page is current care by parent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what Chelsea's asking is data by child.
And the spreadsheet you provided last time, Richard had that. So once again, exactly that spreadsheet would be hit the mark.
Got it. The only thing I think we're lacking is the location of work. Go to the next slide, Stephen, just briefly. That was quality. Next one. Is there a third? Is there one more? No, go back. Sorry, I'm just trying to look through everything we had provided and see for other people on the call who have not seen this before or not visited our board packages. This data is out there, and I'm just looking at where we've missed. We have definitely missed anything about child and age of child. I know Child Care Group can generate that, but it's not a stagnant figure. It will move very quickly based upon replacement of children moving through the system. Okay, back one more, Stephen. Does that bring us all the way back? It does. Okay. We'll work on it, guys, but I would like to know more from an ecosystem standpoint. And I think it's very critical from everybody on this call. I want to make sure this isn't deemed to be all about the workforce systems, childcare endeavors, but there's so much more that we could add to this if we get more data from others on this call. Others who are serving kids who are outside this system, but not in a public system. And so we know we can do DISD and other school districts. That's wonderful, but we do have other mechanisms, I think, here that are at play that we're not gathering. And so part of today's was to get everybody in the conversation and to see if they can help us to grow this a bit, both in data, but content. Susan, sorry, give it back to you.
Frozen mouse, sorry. Yeah, I would love in these last few minutes, and this may be a follow-up exercise too, because I don't want people to put on the spot, but I'd love to know what, again, there are two different kind of dashboards. One is very specific to workforce solutions and what our board needs to look at to make sure we are being the best stewards of the resources that we are entrusted to oversee. If we step back to your point, Lori, in the community, what else ought we to be measuring so that we could make sure that we are, in my mind, the biggest issue there, are we making the best use of all the potentially available resources, whether that's pre-K, Head Start, other, after school programming, et cetera. What else as community partners would be helpful to you for us to track and share with you? And on the other end, what pieces of data do you have that you could share with us that would be important to include in a community-wide dashboard?
For TRS, is it possible to get a average score by domain for each star level to understand where providers may need additional support, and if different community organizations can step in and add some additional support there. So top of mind, thinking like teacher-student interactions, we know that class is a tool that can help with that, and class coaching. And if we can identify that, yes, that's a need for our providers, like bringing in some support to help with that.
Chelsea, is that, I've been assured by the state that TRS does as much or maybe even more review compared to class. We're trying to line the two up. So would this be helpful to do sort of a crosswalk? If we could understand more about class.
No. I'm not even saying crosswalk. I'm just saying,
Okay.
like, do we know that that is a need for our providers? Like, is that an area where like our 3-star providers who are on the cusp of 4, like that's the area that they need the most support with?
We will look back at that and see what we can find. You know, we're having a hard time getting the assessors. The state put in so many criteria that it's pretty outrageous to train people up. SMU has offered some help of identifying some people who want to work in the industry. We only have a year left in the assessor business. The state will take it over through a contractor. And I think it will be, they will change the rules at that time because they put too much on this to get people in the system. They really have. The training takes a long time. It's extreme training from what I understand. Some people who have been in the business 30 years cannot pass the test. And there's an educational background component that is required that is perhaps a little over the top. It's like other people asking for a college degree when you don't really need one. As much of that as is said, let me go back and see what is available to us. I'm pretty sure we have some data. I just don't want to claim we have. If you could share with me, class, in terms of what kind of material, we just need we need to talk.
I'm even just thinking like TRS score by domain is helpful for like us to figure out directionally as partners how we can add some additional support for providers. Class is just
CLI has just started doing reporting to help us do that in the TRS process, Chelsea. So it's really new that we're getting that data now to look at it by category with the assessments with the new implementation of TRS guidelines. So it is becoming available. So we're just starting to get those reports where we can run and see. So we'll look at it and see what we can provide.
Thank you.
Other data point requests that you can think of now, and again, please don't feel like you've got to have a list now, but what else would be helpful?
I mean, I think it would be really helpful as we talk about navigation across the community, if when we're collecting waitlist incoming data at any of these points, whether it be child care group or Head Start or elsewhere, pre-K, if we've got like number of kids by zip code who live in a household under this income. So we could really start to target adjacent services, not only education and care, but SNAP or WIC outreach and things to that nature. If we're going to start kind of consolidating outreach and working a wait list to find resources for families, why not, identify if you're eligible for Head Start, you probably get WIC. I know Head Start does a great job of that as part of the program, right? But
Yep. Others?
Anybody out there collecting something that you think would be of value to us after having heard so much of this discussion? I don't want to call on anybody, but anybody else doing data on the kinds of conversations we're having, or even more quite different conversations about care? Anybody?
We have some data that I think could be helpful around where parents are choosing to send their kids in specific zip codes. It's only 4 right now, but we're scaling that. So happy to share that with you guys.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Well, something I know the state tracks, because I used to ask for this when I worked in the state ledge, was SNAP and WIC recipients by, at least they do it by legislative district. And so we would ask HHSC for that data so that they do have it. And somebody commented on this. I think that if it's not too difficult, the teacher vacancies, because that really goes to show how sometimes there's people on the wait list, you have the physical space, but you just can't get people off because there's not any teachers.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
my suggestion, to have an understanding of how many teacher and teacher assistant vacancies we're looking at and where those are, I think could be really helpful as we try to fill those gaps.
So I'll jump in here just for a minute. So the state has developed the Texas Workforce Registry for childcare. And so to be a Texas Rising Star provider, one of the criteria is they have to get signed up on this workforce registry, and asking about the credentials is a piece of that. The problem is it's not a mandatory field, and so they skip over it. And so I've been trying to run some data from it, and it is just not very good data at this point. So the state needs to really fix that. And then Rhonda, you can help me with this because I think you're more familiar with the database, but do the directors input all of their teachers, or how does that work?
They are not required to. The current requirement for Texas Rising Star is that either the director or some appointed person have an account and list their information. But the teaching staff are not required to. We think that it would be helpful for them to be required to do that, but they don't have to.
So if just theoretically, what would it take for that to be a requirement? Just theoretically.
TWC would have to build that into the TRS requirements. They started out going down that path, and I think there was a lot of pushback around the state from owners and operators. So they backed it down to just the administrator or one designated person.
Yeah, and so the state is building a new childcare system too, and that's going to be coming out and rolling out in the fall of 2023, 24. And I don't know what fields they're going to be building or what collection points, but it would be really nice if that was a field that we could go in and enter in, but we don't have that information yet.
And Chelsea had a good question. I think Jeff too. There are a couple here in the chat. One is that something that our mentors, probably mentors, maybe assessors, could code during a visit? And could that happen locally without that being a state requirement?
So they certainly can ask the question. I think what we run into as a contractor is you got to have a database to put all that in, right? The state database doesn't ask any of that. And so I think that's what we would have to think about locally is, all the information is great and we can certainly ask questions, but then where is all of that to be housed so that we can run the report in the data?
Because otherwise you're just putting it in a separate spreadsheet.
Yeah. Yeah. Or we're relying on, humans to do hash marks, and we don't want that. So, so we do need something to help us with that.
I think you could ask, so a potential fix, and then just the politics behind that. Potential fix is you could just ask a group of friendly legislators to send a private letter to the agency and ask that they make it mandatory. The other side is that it's going to sound counterintuitive, but oftentimes the legislators who represent the non-certified, the places with the highest number of non-certified teachers oppose it because they're in their district. So you could look at, I used to live in 75211, that might have a higher, I'm just making this up, higher number. That legislator may say, you're making my providers look bad. I don't want that. So we could ask if they'll do it, but that is the flip side of it.
You hit the nail exactly on the head. But it doesn't mean we shouldn't ask. I mean, or that we couldn't ask. Let me just say that.
Chelsea, am I understanding your question? Do we have the autonomy as a local board to make that requirement regardless of the state level mandatory statement?
I think she's asking, can we ask it at the local level?
Yeah, can we require that locally? And I think, framing it for your local assessors, that's how they can do their job more efficiently, is I can check on the back end what teacher credentials are and do they meet the percentages necessary for this Rising Star level. before they go to the visit so that they can spend more time in the classroom, observing the classrooms, observing the environment, and they don't have to worry about kind of the back end paperwork stuff.
Are you seeing that being done somewhere else, Chelsea? Another board area, maybe?
No, but I can ask around if others are doing it that way. I just think like in terms of how can we ensure, you mentioned staffing shortages, like we're seeing that across the board. How can we ensure that staff time is utilized most efficiently by cutting out kind of the paperwork side and the time it takes to go look through a binder and see if everyone's, credentials are listed there. And just having
Somebody has to do it eventually, though. It's going to fall
Yeah.
on one side or the other. It's kind of, it's a staffing cost in either way. I don't know. I don't know that I'll run that back through Dee and the others. Is that something that truly would save, or would it simply trade it off and somebody else would have to pick it up?
Well,
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
mean-
whether it saves time or not, I mean, I think it's a piece of data that, say, Heather at Dallas College, like, is very vital. And so
Right.
even if it doesn't save us dollars in cost or ops, we can find dollars. The data is more important than the dollars at this point.
Yeah.
Can I quote you? The data is more important than dollars.
Sure.
I'm sure TWC would love to hear that. I like it. I like it.
I think there's one way to do that is going back to the idea of compelling them, making it a requirement to fulfill their information in the teacher registry. I know another board region that actually did go, provider by provider and input their data, but of course, 4 months later, it's out of date.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. But again, in the spirit of collaboration, we want to be able to work better in our community. And I think if Dallas College has line of sight to what the pool of teachers are that need various credentials, then we can really try to help build and fill that pipeline of teachers, which really is the key to everything. And we can't enroll children right now if these centers don't and can't hire qualified staff. So.
Yeah. Well, it seems like a couple of ways we can come at it. Let's look at what we could do locally and simultaneously be thinking what we could do at the state level to make that a requirement. So, okay, we are just about at our time. So does anybody have any other questions or comments before I wrap up?
And one thing I'm going to do, it's better if I don't put this in the chat because we will close the call. I will put this deck plus some materials that I picked up at the Hunt Institute last week, which were phenomenal. It's an amazing group. It was a summit of policymakers and met with a lot of elected officials throughout their states, North Carolina and Mississippi, different ones we visited with. Very intriguing how everyone is attacking the same problem in different ways. And I promise you, everything we've talked about today is a universal problem in childcare in the United States. I think we're far ahead of most. Texas has done a better than usual job for change. I mean, this is truly a side of public service that is extraordinary. Lots of money, lots of interest. We had a state senator, 2 legislators came on the trip, participated, very intrigued by what others are doing and what Texas is doing. And of course, more than one time I heard one elected official say, oh, Texas has that. Oh, Texas has that. So we're sort of pointing at what Texas doesn't have yet. There'll be a little pushback on that. The other concern I have is pushing the vendors any further than we have already pushed them in terms of meet this standard, do this, give us that. But if we do it carefully, and if they see a benefit to reporting it, and I think that's the key on the teacher, that they see that there's a benefit, not just a stick, not just a conversation about the lack of, but how to get what they need. It's not what we ask for, it's how we ask for it. And let me see what we can do on that and make it about feeding them what they need.
Yeah, what is the value proposition to them? Because to ask for more data to people that are already strapped and understaffed doesn't do anybody any good. If on the other end, I can say, well, if you share this information, this is how it can benefit you, particularly in your center. And so I think I absolutely agree. We want to be very thoughtful about that because we could ask people 9 million data points and run them ragged. And, that is probably not helpful to anyone. So thank you all for joining us today. This was a great discussion. I want to say thanks again to Dee and Lori, Demetria. Great presentation and getting that, the system down into one graphic to echo Ken's words is excellent. Thank you all, community partners and also task force members for really great engagement. Some follow-ups that I recorded is, and this is more on the board side, but getting more information to the task force, particularly about the role, the function, how mentors and assessors, their job descriptions and how and what they are held accountable for. A little bit more about, or more visibility about the operations staffing side for childcare groups. So understanding what are the roles and responsibilities and that your team has in order to drive this amazing amount of work that you do. So thank you, childcare group, for continued excellence. Thinking more on the dashboard is to comb through what we're already collecting and honing that down, and what are the key pieces of data that are important not only for our board, our workforce board, but also more broadly the community. And things that we really talked about were looking at the wait list, and particularly drilling down to ages of kids on the wait list, if possible, zip codes of residents, if probably not of work, because that's probably not collectible, but at least so we know a little bit more about who is on the wait list. And then a way to cross-reference that with other community resources, such as public pre-K, Head Start, or others that we think of, but those are probably two big ones where we could say. And then also discussion around the role of navigators. Is that something for which quality dollars could be used if we wanted to divert some that way? Or are there opportunities? Is this a place where perhaps private funding or philanthropic dollars could come in and help fund or increase the role of the navigators? The Child Care Group has some of those on staff already, but could we use those to be community resources for families that are on the wait list? Did I miss anything?
Susan, I'm just putting in the chat. We're going to send out a schedule. We need to keep this going, and we hope people who joined today will join us consistently so that we can create the ecosystem that has long been needed. I know everybody has other rooms they meet in. That's not a problem. I don't think that one room solves every problem, but this definitely is about collecting enough information to move the needle and getting us all on that same boat. So thank you all so much. I hope you'll stay with us for these conversations. I know the committee appreciates you. Having the committee sit through all of this has been, it's been almost 2 years that we've done these. And
we started in May 19th, May 2019. I looked it up. So there you go.
Okay. I do like the idea that it's a broader discussion though, and I think that will help all of us.
Great. Thank you all. We will get information out about next meetings. If you have other ideas, particularly around data points that you would like to see collected or that you can share, please send those. I think the best person probably to send those would be to Lori and Demetria. You're welcome to send them to me, but I will forward them to them anyway, because I personally will not be keeping any kind of dashboard. So again, thank you all. Big thanks to our workforce board staff, to our task force committee members, and to all our community partners. And thank you, Lori.
Thank you.
Have a great rest of the week and a nice holiday weekend.
Take care.